The question is what kind of general practices we have for managing traffic flow. Are you talking about vehicular traffic flow mainly? Basically, we have, I am a professional engineer. Basically, I'm an engineer by profession, and we have established, standard practices that we use for, if you are talking about corridor, like timing the signals, we analyze each intersection and then look at the traffic volumes and the turn movements, how many vehicles are turning left, how many are going through, how many are turning right. And then in the middle of this, you also have to look at pedestrians crossing. So all these movements are basically conflicting with each other. So it's a balancing act, and we try our best to, provide progression for the vehicular traffic and also give time for the pedestrian crossings. I would like to give you an example for like Cantrell Road is an arterial, and it carries upwards of, I think, close to 50,000 cars a day near I-430 interchange. And as you come closer to the downtown area, it comes down, but still, I think, 30 up to 30,000 vehicles. 25 to 30,000 vehicles a day. And now, I don't know, most of you know the intersection at Rodney Parham and Cantrell Road. That one actually serves as an access to the new Two Rivers Park. Two Rivers Park. So the bicycles don't have any other route except to cross Cantrell Road. So let's say, one guy wants to go to the Two Rivers Park during the peak traffic period. So you have, several thousand cars during that hour that are coming towards downtown. You push a button there, and it has to stop all the traffic to let this guy go. And if you look at it from a, bicyclist point of view, we need to solve them. But when you stop the, traffic for just one bicycle, imagine the amount of emissions you're creating. Hundreds of cars stopping and then starting again, because those are timed to have a good progression. Progression is basically you try to give green band, you get a green at this signal and the next signal and the next signal. It's not easy when the intersections are irregularly spaced because you cannot give bidirectional progression. One ways are easy in downtown. You can give, very good progression. But when you have arterials like Cantrell Road or University Avenue, Chinal Parkway, it is very difficult to balance the traffic flow. And when you add pedestrian crossing and bicycle crossings in the middle of this, it becomes even more difficult. But we try our best to, unfortunately, this may sound bad for you. Our first priority is to move the vehicular traffic with least amount of delay. And it does help, reduce the pollution and wastage of gas, but it creates a problem for the pedestrians and bicyclists. And Bud probably can, tell, how the city is bad in not trying to help the pedestrians and all that. But it's a constant balancing act, and we as engineers, we are required, legally required to do certain things. We cannot, even though we think that we can do it the other way, we don't have a lot of legal protection. For example, when you have to give pedestrian times, you have to give the minimum amount of time to cross. So we assume a certain, walking speed and give that minimum time. Even though, they use a lot less time, we still are required to give that minimum required time, which if you do it again and again and again, you are basically creating a lot of congestion on the major arterial. And once you create a lot of congestion, it's not easy to, flush the system. These are some of the problems we face, and we have a lot of software and simulation models that we use to simulate the traffic. But it is a constant balancing act, and we try our best, basically.
Yeah, I think our other panelists want to talk. Jim,
Yeah,
we'll go down the line.
Yeah, first, we don't have congestion and high density in this metropolitan area. Okay?
I've lived there.
I tell my peers that congestion is perception and it's all relative. So in Arkansas, if you can't drive 20 miles an hour above the posted speed limit in free flow conditions, it's too damn crowded. A lot of the major roads in the metropolitan area aren't city streets, don't fall under NET's purview. Cantle Road is an example. It's a state highway. And there are a lot of old arterial roads that are state highways that you have to negotiate with the highway department. Now the department, bless its heart, they have more roads than they have money to address. That is absolutely true. And they don't do urban very well. So the predominant theory from the department standpoint is if it's too congested, widen the road rather than manage the traffic. Now this is a little something counterintuitive for you. There's a kind of a law in traffic management that most people most people choose voluntarily to drive when it's most congested. Okay? Most people choose to drive in the time and place where it is most congested. Anybody here from Maumelle? Let me give you an example. Apparently, there's a city ordinance in Maumelle that says everybody has got to set their alarm clock within 5 minutes of each other because they all get on Maumelle Boulevard at the same time every morning, right? So that's some of that are the kinds of things that engineers and planners try to deal with. One other thing that engineers and planners are kind of opposed to each other in terms of developing quality of place. Traffic engineers especially, there's a noted planner that we had in to help us develop one of our plans, and he started talking about traffic engineers, and he just started sputtering, and he just finally said, well, they're just evil. They're just evil people. Well, that's not the case, but they do have something that's pretty narrowly focused. We've taken a lot of trips out to Portland, Oregon, which has been doing a lot of things right for the last 40 years. And the mayor out in Portland several years ago says you've got to design your cities for pedestrians and transit users, not for cars. You can't if you want a quality of place, you have to design it for pedestrians and transit users first. You can't try to achieve balance. You can't balance a 4,000-pound vehicle that has an steel exoskeleton with a 150-pound pedestrian. They don't balance, okay? And since the 1950s, 1960s, certainly, we've been designing American cities by and large for the automobile. And a lot of planners think that's backwards. And there's a whole movement in the planning profession to go back to doing things the way we used to do them. Hillcrest is a great example of a neighborhood that was developed without urban planning. We didn't have planning in Little Rock when Hillcrest was built. It was a streetcar suburb. Was the town of Pulaski Heights. This building was at the corner of Prospect Avenue and Beach Street was City Hall for the town of Pulaski Heights. And it's just the way towns developed, and going back to the streetcar garden suburb is a lot of what the neo-traditional or Newtown developers are trying to do, and trying to capture the pedestrian qualities, the transit accessibility, with the car in a subservient and not a dominant position. Your turn.
Jim hit on a whole bunch of very important topics. And I want to give you a website to take a look at when you get a chance, and it's live-active.org. Live-active.org. And that's my website, and it's devoted to active, healthy communities and active, healthy transportation. And I actually brought John Norquist down this street when he was visiting me here 3 years ago, and he fell in love with this neighborhood, and he immediately recognized John Norquist is the CEO of the Congress for New Urbanism. And there's a complete body of work by the Congress for New Urbanism on how to design cities, how to design transportation systems to accommodate people. How many cars cruise down the road that don't have people in them? A couple in California, nothing here yet. A couple in Nevada. So this is about people. And if you, there's a, how many of you have seen the whole idea of the Earth as the center of the universe? Have you ever seen the model of where the stars and planets had to go to make the Earth the center of the universe? Have you? Right? Now I want you to think of that same convoluted mess and put a car in the middle. And say a city designed around a car has to, if the car is the center of the community, it looks like that. But if you put a person in the center of the universe, it looks like the one we're familiar with from grade school. And that everything that he said is about that concept. It's, you know, it's not rocket science. I did some of that out at Jacksonville years ago. This is much easier. If we've all brought our cars with us today, could we fit in here? Of course not. This has a human scale to it, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel good sitting in here? We're at the right distance to each other. Now think about yourself sitting in that same table right there on the edge of any street in Little Rock, except maybe Broadway down by where it's getting hip and trendy. But you know what I'm saying? Set that table out there in Rodney Parham in the, you know, on the edge of it. By Whole Foods is right there. All your friends are there. It doesn't feel like you want to be friendly, does it? It's all about storage. If you take a bunch of cars and put them in a street, you can put 10 on a block in a street, and the street's now full of cars waiting to clear. How many bicyclists could you put in that same block? How many pedestrians? And so once we decide cars have to have access everywhere, then we have to start tearing out buildings and infrastructure to make room for them, because storage is a big issue. So if you've seen pictures from the 1940s between the state capitol and Broadway, that was a robust neighborhood of businesses. And now it's a robust neighborhood of parking lots. And I'm not picking on you. If you're going to have us all going around in cars, you need that kind of facility. If streets are for cars, then how many people have been run over in the last 2 weeks on Cantrell Road? Say hi to James. James was run over on Cantrell Road. The big issue here is that we have to decide what we want, and we can't pick on agencies or organizations or other groups that did this the way we asked them to for the last 50 years. If we want to change the way this works, we have to make that value statement for ourselves. And not to get too picky about it, but there's plenty of support, live-active.org. I've got a lot of resources on there for you to understand active, healthy communities. Dan Burden has been here to town. You're all going to get a report in the next couple of weeks from the university on how they're going to rework the neighborhood around university. I'm not going to put the cat out of the bag, but Dan Burden and his group, have you heard of the Walk Live Institute? In Port Townsend, Washington. Dan Burden, are you a cyclist? Dan Burden was one of the 25 most influential people in the history of the bicycle in America. That was a title given to him by the League of American Bicyclists. And he's walked in over 3,000 cities, probably closer to 4,000 by now. And we had him to Little Rock, and to North Little Rock, and to El Dorado, and to Conway, and around. That's right, he was just in Hot Springs this last year. And so he's been here talking about this neighborhood. We drove down this street in my Triumph with the top down. We had a ball. So that's right about how we meter traffic now. But the one thing that I would differ about is I think congestion's a good thing. It tells you that people want to be somewhere. This street is congested. That's why we like coming down here. We might complain, I was going to say another word, about parking. But once we get out of that damn car, it's a lot of fun down here because it's congested. The Europeans do something on their rural roads that we brought to the city. In Europe, the rural roads have something that they call forgiving highways. A forgiving highway was a new concept in the 1960s, and it took over the world. Forgiving highway says, move all the things I could run into away from the road. Make the road as wide as you can make it. Make sure I can see as far as I can see in the future, and then I'll be able to go fast and be safe. And it works okay in the country. The Europeans said, there's no way we're going to cut up our cities like that. We had Robert Moses and some other people. By the way, they're tearing down the Robert Moses Freeway, Niagara. It's kind of interesting. We had Robert Moses. Robert Moses said, let's tear down our cities and put freeways through them. The difference here is that we've brought those forgiving highways into the city. But what Dan Burden will tell you is when you make the lanes wider, when you make the sight lines really long, when you move the buildings back from the street, it tells us it's okay to go really fast. The difference between 40 miles an hour in your car on a city street when you encounter a pedestrian or a bicyclist, and the difference between 40 and 20 is the difference from near certain death of the pedestrian and near certain life for the pedestrian. So when you got the hammer down going to church because Jesus needs you there on time, some people say there's no sin in speeding. But you're deciding, if anyone jumps in front of my car, I plan to kill them. It's that important. And so what Dan Burton says, if streets are for people, let's narrow those lanes down. Let's make those sight lines something you can't always see. And then people will slow down. It's called a self-explaining street. The street tells you how fast to go.